Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix 24 webinar HR Toolkit. Thank you for joining today. Okay, so we'll just go through some introductions first of all. So my name's Sam Connor. I'm part of the sales engineer team here at Intraface. And we're a Bitrix 24 Gold partner. So we specialize in providing support services for the Bitrix 24 system. We're based in the UK, in the US and Hong Kong, and we offer a full range of services to assist you with Bitrix 24. So first of all, starting off with pre-sale support, so we can really analyze and discuss your requirements in detail, see if Bitrix can be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. If it is, we can then do the full implementation for you, so we can set up Bitrix to your specific requirements. If you're interested in the self-hosted edition, we offer our own hosting services, and we provide bespoke training and ongoing dedicated support to help businesses get the most value out of Bitrix 24. Okay, so before we go into the HR Toolkit webinar today, let's just take a look at actually what Bitrix 24 is. If you're new to Bitrix, if you're coming to the webinar to really learn more about the system today, Bitrix 24 is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 40 different tools that you can use to help you to manage your business. And there are over 12 million customers now using Bitrix 24 around the world. And the system is available in two different editions. So we have the Bitrix 24 Cloud, and then we also have the self-hosted solution as well. In the webinar today, we will cover both the cloud and the self-hosted, and we'll make it very clear if we're looking at one specific edition on a piece of functionality in the webinar today. Okay, and prices start from $49 per month for a cloud-based system, and for a self-hosted edition, you're starting off at the Business 50 edition, which is $2,990. Of course, now with the on-premise system, it is on a subscription model, so you need to remember to budget for the renewal in year 2 and ongoing annually. Okay, so today's webinar is the HR Toolkit. So we're going to be looking at all of the HR features within Bitrix 24. But before we take a look at those in detail, it's important to understand why you can actually use and why you should use the Bitrix 24 system for your HR requirements. So Bitrix has lots of tools within the system for easily finding and collaborating with your colleagues within the system. So whether that's looking at their profile page, or it could be communicating through chat or video call, there's a huge variety of ways you are able to collaborate inside the system. There's also ways we can manage our work time, so we can track all of our time in the system, and there are personal areas for storing our own information, maybe our contracts, maybe appraisal or expense documents. We can manage all of that infrastructure directly inside Bitrix. And then another aspect to HR, it's a really powerful area, are the self-service workflows, such as how we can build bespoke processes such as managing absence requests or purchase requests using the Business Process Designer tool. And what we'll also look at today is how we can use the other type of tool, which is a fairly new tool within Bitrix, which is the Robotic Process Automation tool. So it allows you to create custom processes directly inside the system. So you don't need to just use what comes out of the box with Bitrix HR. You can build your very own workflows and solutions directly into the system. Okay, so let's go and take a look at some of those HR tools in detail. So we'll start looking at the profile and company structure. So that's really important. We can set that up. And that then talks with a variety of different tools in Bitrix, such as if we're using the CRM system, that company structure can be used for when we're setting permissions across the entire system. We'll then take a look at time management, so how we can record our working day inside the system and how that can be reported on. We'll then take a look at the personal drive area, where we can store documents and share access to those documents to other colleagues inside here. And then we'll look at some of the employee engagement tools, which are really important. So there's a huge number of tools in Bittrex that we can use to engage our staff and keep morale up, and also importantly, communicate any critical information through the system. And then we'll take a look at some of the self-service forms and processes that we can build inside Bittrex 24. Okay, so let's go into our Bittrex 24 system. So the tools we're going to look at in this section of the webinar, these are available on both the cloud and on-premise system. So we're here in the browser edition of Bittrex. So this is actually a self-hosted edition. And the system is also available on the desktop application and the mobile app as well. So if you're brand new to Bittrex, you're available to actually log into the portal on a variety of options. But first of all, let's go into our system here. So we're logged in here as Max Smith. And let's first of all go into our profile page inside Bittrex. So within the Bittrex system, each user has the access here to create their own profile page. So we can see here you can add your own real picture of yourself, and all of your colleagues can have their own images inside the system. So that's really quite nice if you are working in maybe different offices, and if you're not all able to meet face to face, having those images directly in the system can start to bring the team together. And within the profile page here, we can see we've got our information. So you can store kind of mandatory information inside the system here. And you can also create custom fields as well. So if you wanted to maybe store additional information inside the profile area, this is actually really customizable. So here you can start to really configure and customize what information you want to display. And this is quite important because you can see here, for example, we've got a custom field here where we can toggle what skill traits we have inside the organization. And we can then use this information later on. We'll see in the employee directory how I can then search for specific staff based on the skill set that has been added inside the profile area here. So we can add our information inside here. We can also see, and we'll look at this later on, is the annual leave. So we can see some holiday requests that have been submitted inside the system. This feature here, this is a bespoke element we have created for the self-hosted edition of Bittrex. So we have an entitlement plugin for the annual leave. So you can add entitlement levels for every single employee inside the system, so they can have an entitlement for every year for how many holiday days they can submit and have approved inside the system. So we can then see that approved leave in here, and we can cancel those requests inside here as well. And then at the top of our profile, we have shortcuts into different areas of the Bittrex system. So if I wanted to go into my drive area, I could quickly drill down to my drive through the shortcut here, or maybe I want to look at all of my tasks. I can see this information through the profile area. So it's a really good area to view a lot of information in a really short, precise platform inside Bittrex 24 using your profile page. Okay, so that's looking at one individual user, but let's go into the employee module now. And this is where we can see how we can build our company structure into Bittrex 24. Okay, so first of all, this is a really important area that we always recommend getting set up almost straight away within the system, because the company structure here is where we can build out all of our different departments for the business. And you can also have multiple sub-departments linked into here as well. This structure we can then use in lots of different areas of the Bittrex 24 system. So for example, we can use this as an approval for maybe holiday requests that we use in the business process designer tool. So anyone, for example, in the finance department, we could have their actual request go to John Smith, as John is manager of the finance department. So we can use this structure for actually building approval processes. And as we mentioned, this structure could also be used in the CRM system to determine what level of access rights different users have inside the CRM system and what information they're able to access. but also just actually visually, this company structure is actually a really useful tool just for maybe new employees who are new to the business. Having this structure in a visual format could be very useful so people know what the departments are in the business, who the employees are actually within each department. That could be really useful information for an employee to have access to. And then we also have the employee database here as well. So inside here, we can store all of the information about all of our employees. And as the administrator, I can customize the UI here. So I can change the structure. And I could also change what custom fields we actually want to show inside here. So this is pulling the data from the profile pages that we've just looked at inside the system. So you can see how customizable the actual UI of Bittrex 24 is inside here. And I could then search through the system. If I wanted to find a certain employee, I could use the free search area here. Or maybe if I want to look at employees based on maybe the skill types that we looked at earlier on, I might need somebody who's got the payroll skill inside the business, and it then drills me down to that data inside the system. So that's really useful if you've got many departments in the business, and maybe you're working in multiple jurisdictions. Having a tool like Bittrex 24 where you can easily search through lots of data points to find the relevant person for your specific inquiry, that can be very useful because it can save so much time inside the system. And if we then go to look at another employee's profile inside here, I can do the chat and video call feature with any other employees inside the system. So here you've got the ability to communicate with your colleagues through Bittrex. So you can do instant chats, you can do voice calls, and you can do HD video calls through the application. And with this, it doesn't just have to be with an individual. We could add multiple participants into these chats. You can have project chats as well. So you can really focus your communications to how you want to communicate through the Bittrex 24 system. Okay, so that's a look there at the profile and company page inside Bittrex. Now let's take a look at how we can record time inside the system. So here's the next area. Past the employee module, we have our work time area. So with this tool, what we can do is we can log the amounts of time that we're spending on each working day. So it may be for reporting purposes, each employee needs to log their start time and their end time. And then we can see the total summary then of their working day inside the system. So here I can see when the user's clocked in, when they've clocked out, so I can see the total working time for the day and how long they've had on their break. And then inside here, we can also add a report. So we can get the user to detail what they've completed on each working day. So you have that history and timestamp inside the system. So you can see at the top of the page here, I've got my clock in section. So what I need to do is I need to click on here and then clock in. And now you can see my working day is now starting to be recorded inside the system. Now, what we can do as well is you might want to say only certain users have to clock in, maybe those in a certain department who you need to log their time for. Then we can turn this on and off here using the clock setting here. I can then customize if the setting is on or off for each user inside the system. So that we have that history of the user's time inside the system. Now you can take this to the next level really by adding schedules. So you might say people have to be clocked in and clocked out at certain time increments. So inside here, what we can do is we can add working hours. So you can actually add the schedule for the working days for your staff inside the system. And then you can decide and apply how long that schedule is going to be applied for inside the system. And we can then track any violations to that schedule. So we may say, for example, that the employees have to be clocked in, let's say by 9:05 a.m. Otherwise, we could set a notification to go to certain members of the HR team and management there, for example. So you can see here how we can really monitor the working time for all of our staff through the Bittrex 24 application, and that can then be reported on inside the time area of your time and report section in the employees module. There is also another area where we can also record time, and that is on tasks. So Bittrex has a really powerful task management module inside the system. And within here, what we can do, we're in a task page here. If you need us to record time on individual tasks, then we can use the time tracker tool here, and we can then log that time inside the system. Or you can also manually record time as well. So there's two options there to manually or automatically record the time using the task time tracker. And what we can then do is we can report on that time inside the task report wizard. So inside here, you can then log the amounts of time that people are spending on all of the different tasks across the entire Bittrex 24 system. Okay, so let's look at how we can log time across working days and also individual task time inside Bittrex. If there are any questions, please do add them into the question box, and we can run through those for you during the intervals of today's webinar. Okay, moving on, we'll now look at personal drives. So this is really useful. We have a drive repository area inside Bittrex. So what we can do is you can connect external applications such as Google Docs, Office 365, or you can upload local files from your local machine. And that information we can then save inside our personal drive area. But what's really nice with this is we could set access rights. So actually, let's say, for example, here on this performance review document, I might say actually certain people within Bittrex are able to have access. So I could set up those access rights inside the system, and you can then choose what users or departments. Maybe let's say if I want the HR department to have access to that document, I could set that access inside the system. And then we can also set up a company drive as well. So inside here, we can set up company drives. So you could have really a central library for maybe every department inside the system. And what's really nice actually within here is, well, we could also set business processes. So we'll look at these later on. But it could be, for example, when a document gets uploaded, it maybe needs to go through an approval process to be accessed by other users inside the system. So on documents that you store inside the drive area, we can also set up personal business processes through the application as well. Okay, so let's look at the drive area. Now, one other feature to mention as well, if we just bring up another drive area inside the system, quite a new feature within Bittrex is the Bittrex 24 Docs feature. So if you want to collaborate with other users in Bittrex on documents, just like you can with other applications like Google Docs, for example, this is how we can do this inside Bittrex. So we can set up our documents, and this can then be live edited inside Bittrex 24, and we can then have multiple users editing the document live inside the system. So you have your own collaboration document creation tool as well using Bittrex 24 Docs. Okay, so let's look at the drive area, and another feature to show you here is the feed section as well. So the feed section inside Bittrex is essentially your own personal newsfeed intranet board inside Bittrex. So any communications you're tagged in, if somebody allocates a task to you or updates a process, anything that you are associated to will show inside your feed section. So inside the feed here, I can see, for example, a holiday request that was rejected. I could see when somebody has communicated with me on a task inside the system. So the feed area will show you all of your critical information inside Bittrex. And you can also search through this information as well. So you could drill down into any element of information inside the feed. But Bittrex is started off as an intranet system. So in terms of HR tools, the feed area here is very important because it allows you to collaborate and communicate and post messages out to specific audiences through the Bittrex 24 system. So let's say, for example, I want to send a message to the sales team, then I can choose those departments through the feed section here. And then this area here is where I can add a message that I can then send out to every user within the Sales UK and the sales management team. So that's pulling from the company structure that we looked at earlier on in the webinar. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're going to send a message to those two departments, and that's then going to go into each user's feed inside the Bittrex 24 system here. So I can add my likes, I can add comments onto here and tag other users. So in terms of having that employee engagement, the feed section is really important because it allows you to send messages through the system, and you can send it to very targeted audiences through Bittrex 24. And if I just show you now, this is another user on their Bittrex system. This is what their feed then looks like. So we can see that message that has been posted out, and they can then like and add their comments back inside the system as well. So rather than having to have external tools or emails, all of that communication can be managed directly through the Bittrex system. And using the feed, there's lots of different types of posts you could set up. So here is the messaging system. Inside there, you could add documents as well, or videos, for example. You can also create tasks through here. You can set up events. So if you wanted to, you could set up meetings or company-wide events and invite people to those events through the system. We can also set up polls. So maybe there's questions that you might want to ask the team. Okay, so you can ask a question, allow people to select their answers. And again, we can decide who this post is going to be sent out to. And so you can make these really fun and interactive and engaging for your team. So if you are a business that has multiple offices in different geographical locations, using some of the tools here within the HR features to engage with your employees is really fundamental to getting buy-in and motivating your staff through the system. And I think a really nice post we could do inside the system as well is an announcement. So if you've got a critical message, you can actually force the user to mark that they have registered and understood that message inside the system. Okay, so we've got this message here, and I can choose how long I want this message to be pinned to the top of the feed for. So we're going to submit this announcement. And now if we go back to our other user, you can see how that looks very different. Okay, so we can see the poll that we submitted as well. And then we can see the announcement here. Okay, so the announcements will show as a widget as well on the right hand side. And I can see now the office is closed and there's a green button here to mark that I have read and really confirming that I've seen the message inside the system. So let's mark that now as read. And again, I could add a communication back onto that announcement. So that's really useful. So for any critical pieces of information, the announcement feature is very good to ensure people have registered and understood the information that you sent out. You could send an email out through your normal process, but there's no guarantee that people have seen that email. Using the announcements feature here can force someone to acknowledge that they have understood the announcements. And one of the posts just to mention as well here is how you can send out an appreciation. So here, if somebody's done a really good job, we could send them a badge through the system here. So let's send Mark this badge, and I'm going to send the actual message we're going to send to all employees so they can see Mark's done a good job. So let's say it could be a new starter who's had a really good first week. You want to give them some recognition. So I can send them the appreciation here, and all the employees are going to see that Mark's done a good job here. So we have that badge. And if we go into Mark's profile area, then inside your profile page, it's also possible to then have those badges stored inside the system. So we can see all the different appreciations here. So as an employee, being able to see all of that information, that's really nice, and it could really motivate the employee inside the system. So that's just a look there at some of the different ways we can use the tools in Bittrex to engage with our employees in a variety of different communication channels through messages, announcements, polls, and appreciations. Okay, so let's just check if we have any questions. As I say, if there are any questions, please do add them into the question box and we can run through those for you today. Okay, so a question here, can an employee be in more than one department? Absolutely. Yeah, so that's a very common use case, is employees may often be in multiple departments, saying they could be in the management team and also be part of maybe the project team as well. So inside here, what we could do is we could add an employee into multiple departments inside the system. And as I mentioned, you can also add multiple sub-departments to the actual department as well. Okay, another question here, can a user clock in on the mobile app? Yeah, absolutely. So inside the time and reports area, you can turn on the functionality to log your time for the working day on the mobile app. If you didn't want the user to clock in on the mobile app, inside the schedule area here, you can just come in and turn that feature off like so. So you have both options there as an administrator to toggle that feature on and off through the system. Okay, so what we'll do now is move on to look at some of the business processes that we can set up inside Bittrex 24. So this is probably the most powerful area of the HR functionality inside Bittrex. So what we can essentially do inside here is we can set up our very own workflows that we can then send through the system to the correct person at the correct times for that process to be actioned. So let's just take a look at one of the processes first of all. So what we're going to do here is submit for some holiday leave inside the system. And the way we're going to do this here is I'm going to click on the workflow area here, and then we can see this form here called the request leave form. So we're going to press this and it will open up a form now that we have to complete to register our holiday request inside the system. Now, this form that you see here, you can see there's mandatory pieces of information that need to be inputted. So first of all, we've got the start date, and then we've also got the end date. Now, the fields here that you actually make mandatory is completely customizable. So you can decide what fields are mandatory. There could be maybe additional fields we're not even seeing here that you would want to have on site on the form. That's absolutely fine. We can add custom fields onto the form here. So I've filled in my information and now let's submit that. So we can see on the feed here, my request leave form has been submitted to my manager. And I can see this is now waiting to be processed. So let's now look at this as the manager. We can see on the notifications, I've been notified that a new request has been brought to my attention. So one of my team has submitted the request. Now, in terms of notifications, you can receive them directly inside the Bittrex system here. You can also receive those notifications via the mobile app. So you can receive them as a push notification, and you can also receive them as an email as well. So you can customize here how those notifications come to you when a new workflow has been triggered. And then what we can then decide is actually I can see all the information about the workflow, and I can then either approve or reject the request inside the system. So I'm going to be kind here. Let's approve the holiday request for Mark. Okay, so that will now be actioned inside the system. And then the user's entitlement will see in their profile here, any holiday request, you can see their entitlements inside the system here using our self-hosted plugin. So if you wanted to add leave entitlements for every employee, how many days holiday they can have inside the system, we can do that with our holiday entitlement absence management plugin. And that feature though is only available with the self-hosted edition. Okay, so all of those holiday leaves that are added inside the system here, we'll then be able to see those requests inside the absence chart. So this will show you across all of the company, and we can filter based on departments. We can then see all of those holiday requests. So Mark's request for the 3rd and 4th, which was approved by ourselves, we can see that inside the system. So this is really useful to be able to see across the business any absences across the organization. So it doesn't just have to be holiday requests. It could be sickness, it could be business trips. We could add all of those different actions inside the system here. And let's just take a look now at the workflow, the back end of the workflow system. So this is what we call the workflow directory, where we can see all of our business processes. And what we can do, what we saw in the feed there, where we went to submit the request leave, you can turn on and turn off what workflows you want to show in the workflow area there. Okay, so what we can now do is let's go into our workflow designer tool first of all. So inside here, just let's see how the workflow looks. So this is what we call the business process designer tool. See, on the right hand side here, you can see all the different action blocks that we can use to build out our process. So let's say if I wanted to come into here, for example, and let's say I wanted to add a task to this workflow, it uses drag and drop technology to build out the workflow. And then I can go into the task and open up the task page and populate the information. Now, this type of work, these workflows, they can be quite complex, and this is where our team at Interface come in to help. We build out lots of workflows for businesses so we can really get the process designed how you need it to work, and we can then implement the workflow for you. Or we could provide training and support to assist you in building the workflow yourself. Now, one feature you have with the self-hosted edition that you don't have with the cloud system is this feature here called the PHP code block. So with this allows you to use the source code essentially to build more complex and more high caliber workflows inside the workflow designer tool using the PHP code block there. So that's with the self-hosted edition. If we just take a look now at this workflow, which is the leave approval workflow, just so we can see this is the back end of what we have just performed. So first of all, we requested the leave inside the system. And this then went to my supervisor to either approve or to reject. And we saw that inside the system. We then went to approve the request. And because we approved it, this then went down the left-hand channel here of the condition. So the absence was added to the absence chart, and we were also notified that the holiday had been approved. But if we had rejected that holiday request, it would have gone down a different flow. So it would have just notified the user that their request had been denied inside the system. So you can see how using conditions such as approval conditions, you can then build a completely different flow for the process inside the system here. So this is a really powerful area of Bittrex. Now, this is so powerful, but a new feature Bittrex have released is robotic process automation. And the reason this has been built by Bittrex is because some people found the business process designer tool maybe slightly too complex, maybe a bit daunting, so they weren't very confident in using the tool. And that's why we really come in as a partner. But what they built here is the robotic process automation tool, because it uses a lot of the foundations of leads and deals inside the CRM system, which is a very popular and well-used area of Bittrex 24. And what robotic process automation allows you to do is it allows you to build your very own workflows using stages. So rather than having a process from start to finish here, for example, we have a recruitment workflow. So across the top, you can see the different stages that we have for the workflow, and that's completely customizable. So inside here, you could have as many or as few stages as you require. You can change the name, you can change the terminology to what the workflow process would be for your HR requirements. And then based on each stage, what we can then do is we could set up automated processes. So for example, as soon as we get to the interview stage here, we can send out for the recruitment workflow here, we're going to send out a template email here. So it's dynamically populated with the person's information from Bittrex. And that's going to be an automated email that's sent out with a link to book an interview for that stage. And for example, as soon as we move to at the hiring stage, we can set up an approval process inside the system. So at every single stage of the workflow here, we can set up automated actions, whether that's communicating with staff, it could be setting processes in place, such as approvals. All of that information is then automated through the system. So this is a really useful new tool that allows you to build your very own workflows directly inside the Bittrex 24 system. And instead of using the process designer tool, we can use stages with automations to design those workflows inside the system. Okay, so that's a look at how we can use the business process designer tool and also the robotic process automation tool to build and design your very own workflows inside Bittrex 24. And in summary today, what we've seen is how we can manage our profiles using the profile and company structure. So we can add all of our employees' information and data inside the system. And we can use that company structure really as a visual aid for people to see the actual picture of the departmental structure in Bittrex and of your company. We can use the time management features to log our working days inside the system and also individual tasks, which can then be reported on at a higher level. We've got the personal drive area to store driving documents inside the system, and we can use Bittrex Docs to actually collaborate on documents directly inside Bittrex. I think a really important thing we've looked at today is the engagement piece. So how we can use the feed area to send out communications to different audiences, and just a variety of different types of posts, from messages to polls, announcements and appreciations. Huge variety of ways we can engage with our staff through the system. And I think that's the most important thing to take from today's webinar. We've seen as well how we can set permissions using the company structure. And then we've got the different types of workflows that we can create using the self-service forms, such as the holiday approval requests, which uses the business process designer tool. And then we've also got the robotic process automation, which uses stages and automations to allow you to build your very own workflows directly inside Bittrex 24. Okay, so here are a selection of our up and coming webinars. So we're here every other Tuesday at 11 AM Eastern time. If you have any questions in the meantime, one of our team will be happy to help you. Please do contact us, sales@intraface.com, and we'll be happy to set up a call with you to discuss your requirements and questions in more detail. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found the HR Toolkit webinar useful. Look forward to seeing you on our up and coming webinars. Bye for now.